Hey everybody, I'm Zac.
And I'm Jesse.
And you're watching In Depth.
On Now You Know.
So before we get going, let's remind everyone that the show is sponsored this week by abetterrouteplanner.com. We planned our entire route to Europe on a Better Route Planner, and the algorithm is so good, it got us everywhere we needed to go perfectly.
Right. Supercharger and non-supercharger stops.
And we're supported by ecoware.us. So go over to ecoware.us. We have new designs uploaded every week. We're carbon neutral, and we plant a tree for every order, and it helps support us on Now You Know. And you know, Jesse, we don't just have t-shirts.
Wow.
Here's one of our newest products. This is a beach towel.
Wow, beach towel that talks about plastic pollution in the oceans.
Yep.
Good thing, it's beach season.
Skip a straw, save a turtle. This is perfect for a beach.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah. You have people, walking around the beach. You go off running into the waves. People walking around with their plastic trash. Maybe they're going to think twice before chucking it in the ocean. You never know.
Exactly. So, Jesse, let's stop being so small-minded, shall we?
Oh, okay. Yeah. I didn't know that I was being small-minded.
Well, I mean, we spend so much time and energy denying what could be and questioning whether it could be, even when our current life kind of sucks, and we don't spend enough time imagining and discussing and planning for the life we want.
Okay.
So, case in point, autonomous cars. Elon just got through with Autonomous Day, where he told us we're going to have 1 million robo-taxis on the road next year. And I believe the technology has caught up with the dream. Little computers that are cheap and powerful are everywhere, and some people have the imagination and the intelligence to see that this can happen and will happen, namely Elon. But the rest sit around and scoff and do nothing to make this a reality. They say things like, I would never let others use my car, or computers can never drive a car like I can. And I think those are small-minded people. It's probably because our educational system rewards small thinking.
Right. You do well on a test by regurgitating. There is a lack of teaching problem solving. There's, they don't teach creativity or, working within groups.
Yeah.
Working well within groups. Like, sure, there are group projects, but they're never like, oh, and everyone contributed. It's
Right.
usually the one person, right? And there's not enough emphasis on engineering and reading what you want. Fiction and science fiction, and what do you want to read instead of oh, we're going to read The Scarlet Letter. It's an American classic.
Do you remember reading any science fiction in high school?
Yes. No, not for high school. I read my own science fiction.
Right. And that's pretty sad because science fiction is a great genre. It allows you to think fictionally, and it also uses science.
Right.
So it's not things that are completely out of the realm. I'm not talking just fantasy, which is fine too, but Harry Potter and stuff. But I mean, science fiction is things that could physically happen.
Right.
It's just we haven't done them yet,
right.
And we're not taught that. So why am I talking about this? Because Jesse and I are at the center of this interesting topic, right? We are always talking on this show about autonomous driving and electric cars and stuff. And we're part of a community with tons of people who love what Elon is doing. And yet, even within this community, I rarely find discussions about what we want our future to look like. This is the fun part to me about living. This is what Elon talks about all the time, about working for a brighter future, about being happy to wake up in the morning.
Right.
Instead, everyone's talking fearfully. What if robo-taxis take over?
Right. What if terrorists use robo-taxis to blow things up or run people over?
It won't happen in my lifetime.
Right.
And to that I say, study history. Yes, it is going to happen. When a disruptive idea meets the time when the technology gets cheap enough, the new technology, whether it's refrigerators or
airplanes, TVs, personal computers,
cell phones.
Right, automobiles. It all happens very quickly. I mean, I think I can say, remember a time when there were no cell phones. The only people with cell phones, they had a big brick, and they were talking about business in the 80s, and no one else had a cell phone. You didn't have a cell phone. No one had a cell phone. And then someone had a cell phone. And then someone else had a cell phone. And then basically everyone you knew had a cell phone, and then you got a cell phone because, well, you had to get one. And this all happened probably within 2-3 years. Maybe you held out, but literally everyone around you was going, who's this weirdo without the cell phone?
Right. And you're missing out on opportunities. And the thing is, it's all happening quicker and quicker every decade. So the LED technology that is in this room right now, for instance, and is probably in your house too, was invented in my lifetime. And we've gone through already like 2 or 3 iterations of light bulbs in my lifetime. I was thinking the other day with Jesse, I was like, when did we go from incandescent to CFL and then to LED. It's happened so quickly, and yet as soon as it happens, you kind of forget that you haven't always done it this way.
Right. You probably haven't had to change an LED light bulb yet. It's going to be a few more years till that happens. Whereas before, you were constantly changing light bulbs. Light bulbs were like a thing. You had to go like, oh, I need some bread and some milk, and I also need some light bulbs because they keep burning out. And now you really, when you need a light bulb, it's because you moved into a new house or you got a new lamp.
Right. So, I mean, yes, there will be robo-taxis and autonomous cars. Yes, they will happen faster than you are imagining right now that they will happen. And yes, they will change so many things.
Right.
And we've outlined some of these things in our Autonomous Driving Future series. Now, that series came out, it's funny to say this, I think it came out before its time, even though it only came out like a year and a half ago.
No one could imagine the premise that you had to accept in order to acknowledge the rest of the series, which was that autonomous cars are going to happen. Right. They're going to be a thing. And we were not talking about the technical aspects of how autonomy would work. We were talking about what would happen after that.
Right.
What would happen to parking lots when all cars would be able to drive themselves.
Right, but so many people stopped us before that and were like, well, this can't happen.
Autonomous cars can't happen.
It's going to be too expensive or blah, blah, blah.
Do it.
Right. So there are tremendous opportunities here and now and in the next couple of years to come. And if you get out there with your surfboard and you hop on that wave and you ride that wave, it's going to be amazing for you, as opposed to standing there with your surfboard and just letting the waves hit you. But the first step is to educate yourself about what is actually happening right now and choose a side. It's either going to be that Elon is wrong and all the bears and the shorts and the Jim Chanoses and the Jim Cramers and the Mark Spiegels and the Bob Lutzes are right, or Elon is right, as he has been about everything else.
Right. And why don't you post just right now, post in the comments if you think that we're wrong, if you think that autonomous cars are never going to happen.
Right. And I'm not talking about that they won't happen for a while. It's either that they're not going to happen at all, or you think they are going to happen. So if you think they're never going to happen, just write never gonna happen. Don't just write it to write it. Think about it for a second.
Right.
If you think that it's never going to be that there's going to be autonomous cars, then by all means write it.
Write it in the comments section. So that way in a few years, we can go back through the comment section
and go,
ha ha, you were wrong.
No, exactly. I would like you to write it down because then there'll be a record for posterity, so that we can prove that we're right.
Right. And we'll just put it on our calendars to in a couple of years to just go back and check and see who was wrong.
Right. So I mean, EVs are really happening. That's pretty much not even debatable anymore. Even though just a few short years ago, people were like, Elon, you're crazy. Why are you making
can't work.
Why are you making a car company that makes EVs?
Where do you put the gas in it?
Yeah. Solar is really happening. Battery storage, which most people a few years ago wouldn't have even been like, what are you talking about battery storage? For utility? For a home?
And now there are such batteries in the world.
Right. That's really happening. Rockets are being planned for Mars. Rocket travel within our own planet is actually being planned right now. And cheap tunnels are happening. Autonomous cars are really happening. We drive them every day. Now, they may not be full level 5 yet, but they're working their way to that point. So history is going to prove us right, and we'll still be alive to celebrate our rightness. We're going to have rightness parties.
We're going to... Oh, your honourable rightness, sir. Welcome to the party of the most honourable right people.
Welcome, Mr. Rightness. You were so right.
Yes, indeed. It's not about being right.
No.
It's about, if autonomous cars are going to be a thing, then what do we get to do with all the parking garages and parking lots and gas stations? What do you want to have happen with those things? Because they won't need to exist anymore.
Right. So let's start talking about, like, for instance, what jobs you should prepare for once engine mechanics and truck driver jobs dwindle to near zero. Let's look forward to the day when we are all energy independent and there's no need to fight wars over oil.
Let's look forward to the day when 1 million people a year don't die on the roads.
Yeah. Let's look forward to when millions of people around the world don't die prematurely every year because of air pollution. I mean, more people are killed by car accidents than by gun violence in the US, with about 40,000 deaths a year. That's mainly going to go away. We'll have mobility back for millions of people who either can't afford a car or can't physically drive. That's an amazing point right there. For all those people out there who are basically stuck for whatever reason, you're not going to be stuck anymore.
Right. We'll free up billions of dollars of capital because we won't need so many cars.
And we'll only need about 1/10 of the cars that we have now. So Steve Lopez at the LA Times, he's doing it. He just wrote an article about autonomous driving in the LA Times and what it could be like for LA. And that's what we need. We need to present this coming reality to the public and get them on board. So instead of complaining about what they'd give up, like, I just want to drive my own car, we need them to imagine all the awesome new possibilities.
Right.
I guess one of the quickest ways to get people on board is just to talk about the money you'll save. It always seems to come down to this, money, right? But autonomous cars are going to save the average person a lot of money every year. And to give you some idea, just in the US, these are just US numbers, $529 billion in new car sales every year will be saved because you won't be buying yourself a car. There'll be $250 billion in car insurance saved because the cars we will have will hardly ever get into an accident. $7 billion won't be needed for car inspections. $150 billion won't be needed for license and registration taxes. $172 billion won't be needed for maintenance because, again, these will be electric cars. That's over $1 trillion a year in the United States just on those things I just mentioned.
A year.
Saved.
A year.
A year. $1 trillion freed up.
$1.1 trillion.
Yeah.
That's $100 billion more than $1 trillion.
And I didn't even get into all the things like the parking lots and the other things. I just cherry-picked just a few things.
That's just the cars.
Yeah. And what will you get back?
Your driveway. That you know, if you own a house, you have a certain amount of land, and I'm going to wager that a pretty sizable area of that land is your driveway.
Yeah.
And your garage. You're going to get your garage back. We're gonna have,
your garage.
We're going to have these garages. Now, most people don't park their cars in the garages, let's be honest, but we still keep the garage for some reason. We still keep it as a garage because when you go to sell
Ready
the house,
for a car, right.
when you go to sell the house, you have to have it as a garage.
Right.
It can't be, you know, a recording studio. It can't be
A bedroom.
It can't be any of these things because at some point it's going to need to be a garage. So we're just going to keep all the bikes and the sports equipment and the kayaks and all the crap. We're just going to keep it in the garage until we have to sell the place. And then we're going to be like, what is all this crap doing in my garage? I'm going to give away half of it and then we're going to have to move it over into the new garage, right? I mean, look around when you're out and about. There's garages everywhere.
Most of society is designed around the automobile instead of around the person.
Right.
So you're then walking around this scale of things that doesn't fit you as a person. You ever try and walk in a city? It's usually uncomfortable unless the city was designed for walking because the scale is laid out for cars.
Right.
And so the places you want to go to, you have to cross streets which are dangerous and you have to walk through parking lots.
Or they're just really far away. It's like, oh, I need to go buy groceries. And it's like, okay, that's 4 miles away. And you're like, I don't want to carry groceries 4 miles. It's because you get in the car for it.
And I do want to talk about the space that we donate to putting your car there, right? That is
and
a huge
it.
chunk of space.
Right.
That will not be needed anymore. And so as soon as you flip the switch in your brain and you go, okay, Zach, you're right. This is going to happen. I'd like to plan for it. You begin to come up with this question of, well, what would we like to do instead? And that's where I want to get you to, because that is the exciting part. That's where we as humans excel at planning for things once we believe they're going to happen. The problem is we just usually wait until it's too late, until the technology is already well established. So if you're a city planner, start planning now for this because it's going to happen faster than you can possibly imagine. Right. And you're still planning the wrong way. You're still planning for when
parking
cars and exactly.
Yeah. And what might need to happen is there might be a central location where cars need to go to charge or to maybe, park, but it doesn't need to be in a very convenient location for pedestrians because it's just going to be like a central little hub.
Yeah, they're going to charge themselves, by the way. This isn't going to be where humans have to be involved at all.
Right. You're going to need one of those, but then all the parking lots in your city can now be whatever the heck you want.
Yeah, they can be buildings, they can be parks, they can be whatever you want.
Make those decisions now. Put in a little, because you could pass this very easy bylaw that would be all parking lots, if the parking lot goes away, must become a park.
Right.
You could pass that as a no one,
Because
no
people
one
would
would be
be
like,
oh, sure, Bob.
sure,
whatever.
yeah, whenever there's less parking lots, you idiot.
Okay.
And so, when some company wants to put in an industrial park there, you'd be like, oh, no, because there's this bylaw that says that parking lot must become a park.
But
regular
again,
park.
but again, if we need the place for housing, affordable
Sure.
housing, or whatever we need it for,
Exactly.
all that space is going to be freed up. And I want us to be thinking about it now because it is going to happen.
And you might be saying like, oh, great, now we're going to have to pay for all these parks and stuff. Parking lots cost money.
Yeah.
And, we talk about this in our autonomous driving future.
Right.
Just the maintenance of each parking lot space is quite a lot of money, which we're also going to be saving, which is not included in the $1.1 trillion a year figure.
And parking lots don't bring joy.
No.
I mean, we're all here on this planet and we're going to be here for just a short amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we'd all appreciate things better, pretty much anything more than a parking lot.
Right.
It's just that it's a necessity we need at the moment.
Right.
Because, I mean, if you look at like a school or a hospital, you have to surround it by either a huge parking garage or a huge parking lot just to support that school.
Right. Which means that the school can't be closed to anything else.
Right. And think of how dangerous it is around the school because you have all these cars that are parked there all the time.
Right.
It's just it's so dumb, and that's all going to change, which is awesome. But none of us are talking about how awesome it's going to be.
Right.
That's the part I'm really upset about because it's an awesome future that's coming.
Right.
We should be so excited about it.
And I mean, it's sort of the same thing that like when we had a bunch of horses all pooping everywhere. And we were like, man, all this horse poop sucks. And people were like, yeah, well, what are you going to do? Horses got to poop.
Right.
And it's like, well, we could have something else. And they're like, no, horses are always going to poop. And it's like, no, but there could be something other than horses. It's like, oh, well, our cities are just going to be full of horse shit. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's just how you're going to have to live your life.
And if we go back to the educational piece,
Yeah.
if we were teaching this in schools, kids, here is how autonomous cars work. It is something that's coming. Think about this. Then these kids could go on to be the problem solvers of tomorrow who would actually be coming up with great solutions. Right. They could, because kids are the first ones to get electric cars. You put a kid near a Tesla, they completely understand it.
And I think that it should be more than just teaching kids about autonomous cars. I think that we need to be teaching kids about disruption. For the longest time, technology was very the same, right? For hundreds of thousands of years, it was like stone tools. And it was like, oh, cool. You would show your children how to chip a stone rock into a tool, and then they would use the tool, and then they would, learn how to chip it themselves. And it just continued for thousands of years like that. There was no change. No one was like, oh, check this out. It's a smartphone, everybody.
Right.
You were just cavemen. And then, things changed. But for the most part, everything was the same. It was, you were born. Maybe there was one innovation and then you died.
Oh, so you're talking about within a lifetime.
Within a lifetime.
Within a lifetime,
the changes have been very small. And so there was no disruption. It wasn't like suddenly you were just like, hey, you know how like we have to ride a horse everywhere? Because it's the Middle Ages? Well, I just invented a bullet train.
Right.
No, the technology was not there. There's so many steps in technology between the Middle Ages and a bullet train that it was just like there was no disruption. There was no way. But we're finally at the point where there has not been enough time that we've been sitting around with this technology to be like, well, what if I did this and added this and presto, now you've got this thing. And there's this whole culture of just repeatedly doing the same things over and over again that we never hardly ever question. What if we did it a different way? Now that we have a smartphone, now that everyone has a smartphone and you have an app, so many apps are, hey, you know that thing? Well, what if you put it on an app and it suddenly worked like that? Boom, Uber, boom, music.
Uber Eats.
Right. All this stuff is like, oh, now you just put it on a phone.
Well, I do. I mean, Uber and Uber Eats is a perfect example. Until you had Uber, no one could picture Uber Eats.
Right.
And then once you have Uber Eats, you're like, oh, I can get anything brought to me.
Right.
Like it didn't have to be
It wouldn't be like,
food.
did they deliver? Right. No, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Uber Eats, boom.
Right.
And all of the things that are like that.
And that changes, for instance, if you're a restaurant who is on a bummer street that like
Right.
no one walked down. Now you're on a great
Right.
street.
If you have great food,
Right.
then and that's great for everyone because now the places with great food are the places that survive and flourish, and that means that the places that were in a great location but had crappy food kind of die off.
And I mean, that disruption we're talking about a restaurant having to be on a great street or not, that just happened right now.
Right.
As we're talking, it's happening.
This is like, those are like one of the things that you can kind of imagine. This is hardly any of the stuff that's like, we have better material science now, which means that instead of making your widget out of this, we can make it out of something better.
Right.
It can last longer. It can be lighter. It can perform better. So many things can be disrupted. I mean, I always like to look at socks, and it's like, really? We're still doing this with the damn seam on the inside? I've probably mentioned it on the show before. Like, really?
That does
It's
bug you, doesn't it?
It's always there? We haven't come up with a better way to do this? You haven't knitted something in a better way to make a comfortable sock?
Right.
Damn it.
Once you
really?
do, Jesse's your first customer.
Absolutely. Or mattresses. Like, we still have the same sized mattresses, even though we've been getting taller for the past, several decades.
Right.
Because we've been better nourished. And so my feet stick off the end of the bed. Why? Why do they stick off the end of the bed? Make longer mattresses, damn it. Innovate. Disrupt. Again, the disruption is there for so many different things, and we are not teaching how to do disruption.
Right.
We are teaching how to do business as usual,
Right.
and the rest of the world is going business as usual.
Exactly.
Because if something were to disrupt, I could lose my job.
Right. And the reason we're teaching kids how business is done right now is because we don't have people in education, enough of them, who are thinking about who are imagining the future. And so we need
disruption.
Right. We need futurists who are actually thinking about what could be, so that we could teach our kids, you know what? You're never going to be able to train right now at 12 for what's going to happen when you're 30. That's just, we can't do that anymore.
Right. And we need to play test. I mean, we need to be thinking about these future concepts so that way we can find issues.
Right.
We can be like, oh my gosh, you know what? If all the cars were on the same, server or whatever, you could control them all or something. And oh no, maybe you could smash
Right.
them all into something.
Right.
Oh, okay. Well, if that's true, then we should make sure that the security is excellent. Think a couple steps ahead, play test this stuff out. Hey, what if someone just dumped a bunch of electric scooters on the streets tomorrow? And had an app system, and what would that do to our city? I have no idea. But let's think about it for a little bit.
And if you are able to think ahead, you're able to see past things that are a problem today. So you might think today, like, oh, well, buying this house over here is bad because it's not near a subway and it's on a crowded street. But the day of, tomorrow, the future, that house might be the perfect location because no longer do you need to worry about the train, and there's no more cars that are going in front of it all day long.
Your commute might suddenly become wonderful, right? Instead of a commute being like, I have to sit there in traffic for 3 hours every day, it could be, I get to relax for 3 hours every day, or I get to work for 3 hours every day.
Or there's no, as we pointed out in the autonomous driving future, there will be no traffic in the future. Again, hard to picture when I say that. You're like,
it won't be 3 hours. You're going to be sitting there for maybe 30 minutes.
And politicians, watch my autonomous driving future, because if you want to run on a platform that definitely would get everyone's vote, no traffic would be the 100% vote getter, and you can do that with this technology.
Right.
I know it seems too good to be true, but it is going to happen. Right. And when it does, again, we would love to come back to this video, look down below, and see which of you actually believed us.
So thank you so much for watching this episode of In Depth. We didn't get too much into the weeds on any particular point, but it's just, we have to go a little in depth on this stuff.
Yeah,
you have to open your mind a little bit and think about the possibilities. Just think for a minute. You have a car that drives itself. What can you do? You get in your car.
I like to go back to when the car was being invented. If you were a naysayer kind of person, think of how many negatives you could come up with. Wait a minute. This car's going to go how fast? What's going to keep you from flying out of the car? What, seat belts?
Right.
Wait,
If
are
you
you going to have to
go too
invent
fast,
some kind
you're
of
not gonna be able
bag
to
or something
breathe.
that
All
pops out?
sorts of things,
I mean,
right.
you would come up with so many problems because you know what? There are tons of problems with
Right.
what we do right now. Wait, you mean to tell me if someone got behind the wheel and they weren't paying attention, they'd kill everybody?
Right.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
And, I think that it's just important to be thinking about how exciting the future could be. It could be that you get in a car and you get a massage on your way to work. And then you leave, and that person goes, the masseuse says, okay, bye. And then they go pick someone else up and bring them on their commute and gives them a massage
Right,
as well.
there's so many new business possibilities.
And that person has a job.
Yes.
They're a masseuse on the go. They don't have to work at a massage place, which is at a certain location, which means that they have to schedule events like that. It could just be like, oh, let me just open my Massage You app and I'm going to this location and the car will be here in 5 minutes.
Because here's the thing. So many people right now are going to say things like, well, you're just killing a lot of jobs, Zach and Jesse.
Right.
No, we're not.
Right.
All the jobs that got lost when horses went to cars, they didn't disappear. They got turned into new jobs. And that's what's going to happen in our autonomous driving future. Yes, there will be some jobs lost, but there'll be some jobs gained.
And if the Luddite fallacy finally turns out to be false, and this is the one thing that finally means that there are going to be less jobs than people, then we need to be thinking ahead about it. We can't just bury your head in the sand and go, well, it shouldn't happen because that would be bad.
Right.
It's not going to stop it.
Exactly.
So we need to be thinking ahead about this kind of stuff. And we will be talking more about it in the future, I'm sure. But I really encourage you to go watch our Autonomous Driving Future series. It covers a lot of this different stuff. And I hope that you enjoy it. If you haven't watched it before, if you have watched it before, maybe give it another watch, because now we actually have some pretty clear evidence that this stuff is going to happen. And yeah, thanks so much for watching. Now you know.